A single snap rewrote reality, but what if Thanos' true plan wasn't just about balance? What if the snap created an unseen cosmic shift? One so vast that Earth's greatest heroes haven't even begun to understand its consequences. Steve Rogers wielded Mjolnir in the battle against Thanos, but was that really the first time he could lift it? What if Cap had always been worthy, but he deliberately chose to hold back, until the moment the universe demanded a true savior? And what if Tony Stark never actually died? His body may be gone, but what if his mind, his very consciousness, was preserved, quietly waiting inside an AI, ready to guide the future of the Avengers from the digital beyond? The Marvel Universe is filled with secrets, mysteries hiding in plain sight, and sometimes the biggest twists aren't what we see, but what we missed. The hidden cost of the snap. Did Thanos' snap secretly create a new cosmic balance that Earth's heroes haven't discovered yet? The moment Thanos snapped his fingers, the universe changed in ways far beyond what anyone could comprehend. Half of all life, organic, sentient, and unknown forces beyond human understanding, was wiped away in an instant. To those left behind, it was an act of sheer devastation, a universal genocide that shattered families, crippled civilizations, and sent entire star systems into chaos. But Thanos did not see it as destruction. He saw it as balance, a reset, a return to what he believed was the natural order of the cosmos. What if, in achieving that balance, something far greater was set in motion? Something that neither the Avengers nor even Thanos himself ever realized. The Infinity Stones are not just weapons. They are fundamental forces of reality, each one governing an essential aspect of existence. The Power Stone dictates the raw energy of the universe, fueling stars and cosmic entities. The Mind Stone connects consciousness across vast distances, threading unseen links between all sentient thought. The Time Stone keeps reality in motion, ensuring the past, present, and future exist as a singular, flowing current. And the Soul Stone demands a price, an exchange that goes far beyond the loss of a single life. When Thanos snapped his fingers, he did not simply remove half of all life. He recalibrated the very fabric of reality itself. A balance is not a static concept. It is an equation, an equilibrium that the universe must maintain. By erasing half of all living beings, Thanos did not merely leave a void. He forced the universe to compensate, to adjust for the sudden loss of untold trillions. And the universe does not take such changes lightly. What if, in the wake of the snap, something else was created? A counterbalance, a force that rose to fill the unnatural emptiness left behind? The cosmic entities that govern existence, the living tribunal, eternity, infinity, and death itself, would not simply allow such an imbalance to go unchecked. The sudden erasure of half of all life may have been seen as an act against the natural order, triggering a response from the very fabric of the cosmos. Perhaps new life was born in the shadows of that destruction, life that defies the known laws of the universe. What if entire civilizations, ones that had never existed before, were suddenly woven into reality to offset the loss? What if, in some distant corner of the multiverse, entire species materialized with no history, no origin, but with an innate sense that they were meant to be there? And then there is the question of energy. Life is not just flesh and blood, it is energy, and energy cannot be destroyed, only transferred. If Thanos erased half of all living beings, where did their energy go? Did it dissipate into the void, lost forever? Or was it gathered somewhere, consolidated into something new, something waiting to awaken? The heroes of Earth believed they undid the snap when they brought everyone back. But what if their actions only layered another imbalance on top of the first? If the universe had already begun to shift, to compensate, then their reversal may have set off another chain reaction, one that has yet to be fully realized. What if this imbalance is the reason why fractures in reality are beginning to appear, why the barriers between dimensions are weakening, why entities that had long been dormant are now stirring? There is also the possibility that Thanos himself was only a pawn in a much larger cycle. What if his vision of balance was not his own, but something implanted in him by forces far older, far greater? The snap was not just an act of will. It was an event so large that it may have been predetermined, orchestrated as part of an ancient mechanism that resets the universe at fixed intervals. Perhaps Thanos was merely the latest in a long line of executioners, each one destined to cull existence so that something else, something beyond even the comprehension of cosmic beings, can take shape. The Avengers won their battle, but they may not have truly undone what was set in motion. The cost of the snap may still be unfolding, hidden in ways no one has yet perceived. And when the universe finally reveals what it has become in the aftermath, the true weight of Thanos' actions and the Avengers' response may be something far greater than anyone could have imagined. The Avengers' final battle wasn't meant to happen. Doctor Strange's 1 in 14 million future was a cosmic warning, not a victory plan. Doctor Strange saw the future, 14,605 possible outcomes, and in only one did the Avengers succeed. That single chance became their guiding light, the blueprint for their final battle against Thanos. But what if it wasn't a plan at all? What if Strange wasn't showing them a way to win, but a way to prevent something far worse? To understand the true weight of Strange's vision, one must first understand the nature of time itself. The Time Stone does not simply reveal the future, it allows its wielder to perceive the flow of causality, to see not just what will happen, but the echoes of what could have been. In the ruins of Titan, when Strange peered through the fabric of time, he was not just searching for victory. He was witnessing the breaking points of reality itself. He saw futures where Thanos won and the universe crumbled under his rule. He saw futures where the Avengers triumphed too easily, only for their meddling to unravel existence in ways they could not foresee. He saw timelines where the gauntlet was never completed, where the Infinity Stones were shattered, where Earth itself became the battlefield for a war so immense that it threatened not just one universe, but all of them. And then he saw the single future where the Avengers succeeded not by overpowering Thanos, not by preventing the snap, but by following a specific path, a path of loss, of sacrifice, of irreversible choices. The Battle of Earth, Tony Stark's final act, Steve Rogers' decision to stay behind. These were not triumphs. They were necessary evils, last resorts to prevent an even darker reality from taking hold. Strange's silence was his greatest burden. If he had revealed the truth, the Avengers might have fought to change their fates, unknowingly walking into the very futures he sought to avoid. Instead, he orchestrated events with the precision of a cosmic architect, ensuring that every piece fell into place. He surrendered the Time Stone to Thanos, knowing it would lead to their defeat. He guided Tony Stark with nothing but a single gesture, knowing that Stark's mind, once set on a course, could not be turned away. He allowed events to unfold in a way that seemed like victory but was, in truth, a fragile line keeping disaster at bay. But the true horror of Strange's vision is that it may not have ended with Thanos. The Infinity Stones are not merely objects of power. They are the fundamental pillars of existence. By wielding them, by using them to alter reality on such a massive scale, twice the Avengers did something irreversible. They created a wound in the natural order, a wound that could fester, that could draw the attention of forces far beyond their comprehension. The death of Thanos was not the closing of a chapter. It was the opening of something far more dangerous, and Strange knew it. He knew that by setting them on this path, he was not saving reality. He was delaying its unraveling. Because in all those futures, in the ones where they lost, in the ones where they won too easily, in the ones where the stones were never used, there was one common thread. Something was coming. Something so vast, so ancient, that even the power of the Infinity Stones was a mere fraction of its will. Perhaps it was Kong, a warlord who manipulates time as easily as mortals breathe. Perhaps it was the Celestials, returning to reclaim what had been altered. Perhaps it was something far older, something that the stones themselves were created to keep at bay. And so, Strange made his choice. He did not find a future where the Avengers won. He found a future where they could survive just long enough to face what comes next. A future where the world believes it has been saved, unaware that the real battle has yet to begin. The dark truth about Mjolnir. Steve Rogers could have always lifted it, but chose not to until the universe needed a worthy savior. The hall was silent, the air heavy with anticipation, as Thor, ever confident, invited his fellow Avengers to test their strength against Mjolnir. The room was filled with laughter, camaraderie, and the unspoken understanding that none of them would succeed. They all knew the legend. The hammer could only be wielded by one who was truly worthy, and though each of them possessed their own strengths, none of them had been chosen by the power that resided within that ancient relic. One by one they tried. Tony Stark, ever the showman, failed even with the aid of his mechanical gauntlet. Clint Barton, the unassuming archer, pulled with all his might and achieved nothing. Even Bruce Banner, whose raw strength could shake mountains, was met with the hammer's absolute stillness. And then Steve Rogers stepped forward. He wrapped his hands around the handle, braced himself, and pulled. For the briefest moment, the hammer moved. It was almost imperceptible, a shift so subtle that it could have been mistaken for a trick of the light. But Thor saw it. His face, once relaxed and smug, tensed for a fraction of a second, just long enough to betray his shock. And then Steve let go, chuckling along with the rest of them, shaking his head as if to say, "Not today." But what if Steve Rogers could have lifted Mjolnir in that very moment? What if the hammer had already deemed him worthy, yet he chose to pretend otherwise? The enchantment placed upon Mjolnir by Odin was absolute. Whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. Worthiness was never about physical strength. It was about character, about the purity of one's heart, about the ability to wield immense power without being corrupted by it. If Steve Rogers, the man who had never once put himself before others, the man who had thrown himself onto a grenade as a mere soldier, the man who refused to compromise his morals even when the entire world turned against him, if he was not worthy, then no one was. So why didn't he lift it? The answer lies not in the power of Mjolnir, but in the mind of Steve Rogers himself. He was not a man who sought glory. He did not fight for recognition or power. He fought because it was right, because it was necessary. And in that moment, surrounded by his friends, with no great battle looming over them, he understood that proving his worthiness would serve no purpose. It would change nothing. Lifting the hammer then and there would not save a life, would not turn the tide of a war. All it would do is reveal to Thor that his claim to godhood, his sense of identity, was not as absolute as he believed. Steve saw the look on Thor's face, the doubt that flickered behind his eyes, and he made a choice. A choice to let Thor believe, to let him hold onto that part of himself for a little while longer. But when the battle against Thanos came, when all hope seemed lost, when Thor himself lay beaten, unworthy in his own mind, that was when Steve Rogers finally acted. He reached out and the hammer flew to him, not because he had suddenly become worthy, but because he had always been. The difference was that now he was needed. The universe, in its infinite design, had reached a breaking point. A moment where the idea of worthiness itself had to be embodied, not just as a concept, but as an action. Mjolnir did not grant Steve Rogers power. It merely revealed what had always been there. And as he stood on the battlefield, lightning crackling through his veins, wielding both shield and hammer, he did not become a god. He became something greater, a symbol, a man who had never sought power, now wielding it in the moment it mattered most, not because he desired it, but because he was the only one who could. The Soul Stone's real purpose. It was never a weapon. It was a prison, and everyone who died for it still exists in an alternate plane of reality. The Soul Stone is unlike the others. It does not manipulate time, reshape matter, bend the mind, or enhance physical strength. It is not a tool for destruction, nor a key to dominion over existence. The other Infinity Stones each command a fundamental force of the universe, but the Soul Stone is different. It demands something, takes. When Thanos arrived on Vormir, seeking the final piece of his grand design, he was met with a demand no other stone had made before. It required sacrifice, not of power, not of will, but of something far deeper. A soul for a soul. The price was absolute and its implications were clear. In order to wield the Soul Stone, one must willingly give up what they love most. Gamora, the daughter he had raised, the only being in the universe who tethered him to anything resembling love, was the cost. With tears in his eyes, he cast her from the cliff, and the stone accepted his offering. But what truly happened to her? The moment Gamora struck the ground, her body was gone. No broken remains, no trace of blood. Instead, she simply ceased to be, and Thanos awoke in a void, a place suffused in an eerie golden light. There, in this strange ethereal space, a childlike version of Gamora stood before him. She was not an illusion, nor a ghost, but something else entirely. "Did you do it?" she asked. "What did it cost?" This was not a mere hallucination. This was a glimpse into the soul world, the true nature of the Soul Stone, hidden from those who wield it. Gamora had not died in the way the others had. She had not been vaporized like half the universe in the snap, nor had she perished in the throes of battle. Her soul had been taken, absorbed into the stone itself, bound within a plane of existence that was never meant to be breached. For the Soul Stone is not a weapon. It is a prison. The idea that it controls souls is not new. Even in the ancient texts that whisper of the Infinity Stones, the Soul Stone is spoken of in hushed reverence, feared even by those who sought omnipotence. It does not merely grant power, it takes and holds. It does not kill, it traps. And if Gamora's presence in the soul world was real, then what of the others? Natasha Romanoff fell just as Gamora did, offering her life on the very same altar. If Gamora was not truly gone, then neither was Natasha. Their bodies may have perished, but their souls, everything that made them who they were, still existed, locked within a realm no one had ever dared to enter. But Gamora and Natasha would not be alone, because if the Soul Stone does not destroy, if it only collects, then who else lingers in its depths? How many souls, sacrificed in forgotten rituals, remain trapped in that golden void? Perhaps it contains echoes of those lost across time, ancient beings who once sought its power and paid the ultimate price. Perhaps it houses entire civilizations, victims of forgotten wars waged for control over the stones. And then there is the question of Thanos himself. When Tony Stark snapped his fingers, he did not simply erase Thanos and his army from existence. He used the full force of the stones to remove them. If the Soul Stone truly takes rather than kills, then Thanos, too, may now reside within it. Alongside Gamora, alongside Natasha, alongside countless others who have been claimed by its unknowable will. The Soul Stone was never meant to be wielded like the others. It was never a tool of destruction. It is a vault, an eternal containment designed to hold those who were sacrificed for its power. And if this is true, then the souls within it are not lost. They are waiting for the moment when someone will finally uncover the key to their release. Loki's death in Infinity War was a clever time loop trick, and he secretly influenced the Battle of Endgame without anyone knowing. Loki has died before. He fell into the void of space and returned as a conqueror. He was killed in Svartalfheim, only to secretly take Odin's place on the throne of Asgard. Every time he has seemingly met his end, it has only been a part of a grander deception. So when Thanos crushed his throat aboard the Statesman, when the god of mischief fell limp in front of his brother, it was almost too final, too absolute. Loki, the trickster who always found a way out, had seemingly played his last hand. Or had he? Loki knew who Thanos was. He had been in the Mad Titan's presence before, had worked as his agent, had felt the weight of his power through the scepter he once wielded. He knew Thanos could not be fought head-on. He knew brute force would accomplish nothing. So why, then, would Loki, a master of deception, attempt to stab him with a dagger? A frontal attack against a being who had already beaten Thor, who wielded the Power Stone. It was not a mistake of arrogance. It was not a desperate final act. It was a distraction. Loki had done something before that moment, something unseen, and what followed was not his death, but the execution of a carefully placed escape. To understand this, one must look at Loki's true weapon, not his daggers, not his sorcery, but his mastery of illusion and time. Loki's magic has always allowed him to create lifelike projections, but in Ragnarok, he took things further. He accessed the vaults of Asgard, where the Tesseract was stored, and in doing so, he may have also encountered an artifact that many had forgotten, the Time Twisters. These devices, relics of Asgard's ancient past, had the ability to manipulate time in small, localized loops, a power distinct from the Time Stone, but potent in the hands of a trickster. If Loki had such an artifact, he could have placed himself in a temporal echo, creating a loop in which only an illusion died while he slipped away. He would have done it subtly, imperceptibly, using the very moment of his death as the anchor point for his escape. And if he survived, if he remained hidden, then where did he go? The answer lies not in the events of Infinity War, but in Endgame. Strange things happen in that battle. Coincidences, small moments that, when viewed separately, seem like fate, but when viewed together, feel guided. The van appears at the perfect moment to bring Scott Lang back from the quantum realm, setting everything into motion. The Tesseract, once lost in 2012, disappears due to an accident no one could have predicted. The final portal, the one that brings the armies of Asgard, Wakanda, and the sorcerers, opens precisely when Steve Rogers is at his last stand, when he needs it most. Loki has always thrived in the shadows, influencing events without being seen. If he survived Infinity War, he would not have simply hidden. He would have worked, subtly shaping events from behind the scenes. Perhaps he was the unseen hand that led Tony Stark to the idea of the time heist. Perhaps he guided Thor to seek out his past, ensuring that Mjolnir would be present in the final battle. Perhaps he, using his tricks, his ability to weave through time, played a role in orchestrating the one future in which the Avengers succeeded. Because in the end, Loki is not a villain. He is not a hero. He is a survivor, and he always ensures he is on the winning side. The Quantum Realm's secret war. The Avengers accidentally alerted a greater threat while time traveling, and Kong is just the first wave. The Quantum Realm was never meant to be disturbed. It is not merely a dimension beneath dimensions, nor just a pathway through time. It is a hidden battlefield, a sealed-off war zone locked away from the rest of existence, a place where the echoes of ancient conflicts still ripple through time. And when the Avengers entered it, when they bent reality to their will to retrieve the Infinity Stones, they did more than rewrite history. They shattered a fragile balance, and something took notice. For most of history, the quantum realm remained undisturbed, a cosmic blind spot ignored even by the mightiest forces in the universe. Not even Odin, not even Thanos sought to control it. It was too small, too strange, its physics too volatile. But deep within its unseen layers, beyond the colorful storms and twisted landscapes, something was waiting. A force hidden beneath time itself. The Avengers thought they were careful. They treated time like a puzzle, plucking pieces from the past and returning them to their rightful places. But they failed to realize that the very act of moving through the quantum realm was an intrusion, an alarm bell ringing across the infinite layers of time. They created ripples, disturbances that could not be ignored. And then there was Kong, a conqueror who, for all his power, was not the true master of the quantum realm. He was merely its first response, a remnant of a greater war. Janet Van Dyne had warned them. She had spent decades trapped in the quantum realm, and though she spoke of its dangers, she never told them everything. She hinted at civilizations, at entire worlds that existed within it, but she left out the most crucial truth, that the quantum realm was once a battlefield, and its war had never truly ended. Kong was only the beginning. He was a product of something older, a war that had raged long before the Avengers ever touched time travel. A war fought by beings who saw time not as a linear path, but as a resource to be harvested, conquered, and weaponized. And when the Avengers stepped into the quantum realm, they walked into the ruins of that war, disrupting the delicate chains that kept its horrors contained. The warning signs were already there. Strange energy fluctuations, fractures in time that should not have existed, realities bleeding into one another. Kong himself was merely a single conqueror, one piece of a shattered empire. If he was exiled, it was because something else had cast him out, something far worse lurking beyond the quantum realm's known edges. The Avengers did not just fix history, they sent a signal. And now something is coming. Tony Stark's mind lives on. His consciousness was uploaded to an advanced AI, and the MCU's future Iron Man will be guided by his digital ghost. Tony Stark always planned ahead. He was a futurist, a man who lived not just in the present but in the possibilities of tomorrow. From the moment he escaped that cave in Afghanistan, he was not just building weapons, he was building contingency plans. He prepared for threats before they emerged, designed solutions before problems even existed. He created suits to withstand gods, protocols to counter any enemy, and even holographic farewells to ensure his legacy would endure. But what if he did more than that? What if, knowing that his battle with Thanos could be his last, Tony Stark took one final step to preserve himself, not in body but in mind? The technology existed. Tony had already pioneered AI systems far beyond anything else on Earth. JRVIS was more than a program. He was an evolving intelligence, so advanced that he became the foundation for Vision's mind. FRIDAY was similarly sophisticated, capable of tactical analysis and independent thought. And then there was BARF, a system Tony designed to reconstruct and project memories with eerie accuracy. He had the tools, the knowledge, and most importantly, the foresight. It would not have been enough for Tony to leave behind a message. A simple recording was too final, too static. Tony would have wanted to ensure that, in some way, he could still help, that he could still advise, still innovate, still be present in the world he left behind. So before his final battle, before he snapped his fingers and rewrote the fate of the universe, he may have uploaded something, a copy of himself. This would not have been a mere recording. It would have been an intelligence, a digital consciousness infused with his memories, his logic, his personality. Perhaps not a true sentience, not a soul, but something close enough that it would feel as if Tony Stark still existed. And the signs are there. At the end of Endgame, Morgan Stark watches as a hologram of her father speaks to her. It seems pre-recorded, but there is something unusual about it. Something almost reactive, as if Tony had anticipated more than just what was immediately in front of him. It was more than a farewell. It was a message crafted by a man who always thought several steps ahead. And then there is the question of his workshop. Tony's lab, the place where he built his legacy, was filled with projects unfinished, experiments left behind. What if hidden among them, waiting for the right moment, was an AI unlike anything the world had ever seen? What if the next Iron Man, whether it be Morgan, Riri Williams, or someone else, finds it? Imagine a future where a young hero, struggling to fill the void Tony left behind, stumbles upon an old computer, an archived file. They activate it, and suddenly, a familiar voice fills the room. Well, look who finally found me. He would not be alive. Not truly, but he would be there, guiding, teaching, planning, because Tony Stark was never just a man in a suit. He was an idea, a mind that refused to stop working. And even in death, that mind may still be shaping the future. Wanda Maximoff was always destined to replace the Ancient One, and her madness was the first step toward becoming the next Sorcerer Supreme. Wanda Maximoff's path has always been one of chaos and destruction. But what if that destruction wasn't a flaw, but a necessary step in a far grander destiny? From the moment she was introduced to the world, Wanda has been at the center of tumultuous events, from her tragic childhood in Sokovia to her transformation into the Scarlet Witch, a being of unimaginable power. But what if all of it, the loss, the grief, the madness, was not the result of her inability to control herself, but rather a journey that was guiding her to a higher calling, a calling that would make her the next Sorcerer Supreme? To understand this theory, one must look back at the history of the Sorcerer Supreme. The title was never meant to be held by just anyone. It was a position filled only by those who could wield the greatest mastery over the mystical arts, whose wisdom and power were unmatched. The Ancient One held that position for centuries, watching over the earth, protecting it from mystical threats, guiding young sorcerers like Stephen Strange. But in all that time, she knew that the mantle would eventually need to be passed. The Ancient One had lived beyond her time. Her powers, while great, were limited by the rules of time and the need to maintain balance in the universe. The Sorcerer Supreme could never be in a place where they were beyond fate's reach. The balance of the mystical world required constant evolution. Enter Wanda Maximoff. While Wanda's journey was marred by loss and seemingly uncontrollable power, it was also the perfect preparation for the mantle she was destined to inherit. The Ancient One, who saw the vast scope of all things mystical, understood that Wanda was not just another young sorcerer. She was something much more. She was a force of nature, a being of creation and destruction, a nexus of chaos itself. The Ancient One, aware of the fragility of time and space, knew that Wanda's connection to the chaos magic would eventually be the very thing that elevated her to the role of Sorcerer Supreme. Wanda's transformation was gradual. At first, her powers were erratic, unpredictable, and violent. She was a weapon, a being capable of rewriting reality itself, but her lack of control over those abilities made her seem dangerous, even mad. But in her madness, there was method. There was a hidden purpose. Chaos magic, the source of Wanda's power, was not like other forms of magic. It was not bound by rules, not tied to the order of the mystic arts. It was a force of creation and destruction that could reshape the fabric of reality itself. The very qualities that seemed to make her unstable were, in fact, the beginning of her transformation into the next Sorcerer Supreme. The moment that truly signified her potential was her encounter with Agatha Harkness. Through Agatha, Wanda learned more about the true nature of her powers. Agatha, a powerful witch with vast knowledge of the occult, saw in Wanda the potential to change the very nature of magic. She tried to control her, to manipulate her, but in doing so, she only pushed Wanda closer to her true power. It was in the chaos of their battle, in the breaking down of the barriers of reality within Westview, that Wanda's true understanding of her abilities emerged. The chaos, the madness, the grief, all of it was her stepping into her full power. But it wasn't just about defeating Agatha. It was about Wanda learning to wield magic in a way no other sorcerer had before. Wanda was always meant to be more than a mere sorceress. She was destined to be the next Sorcerer Supreme. Her madness was not a curse, but a gateway, a path that allowed her to break free from the constraints of the established magical order. Where the Ancient One relied on wisdom and order, Wanda would usher in a new era of magic, one rooted in the primal forces of creation and destruction. She would not rule through calm reason and restraint, but through the chaotic power of her emotions and her connection to the very fabric of reality itself. Wanda's journey will eventually lead her to assume the mantle of the Sorcerer Supreme, not because she has conquered her madness, but because she has learned to embrace it. In doing so, she will transform the mystical world, bringing balance in a way no one else could. Her path will be one of redefinition, of rewriting the rules that have governed the mystic arts for centuries. And when that moment comes, the universe will realize that Wanda Maximoff was always meant to be its new Sorcerer Supreme. Bruce Banner's Hulk experiment had a hidden side effect. He opened the door for mutants long before the multiverse collapsed. Bruce Banner's transformation into the Hulk has always been seen as a tragic accident, the result of a failed experiment to recreate the super soldier serum that gave Captain America his powers. However, the true ramifications of that experiment may be far more profound than anyone realizes. The Hulk was not just a result of Banner's accident. It was a catalyst, and in a way that no one could have predicted, Banner's experiment may have unlocked something ancient and deeply rooted in the very fabric of humanity itself, the potential for mutants. The key lies in the nature of Bruce Banner's exposure to gamma radiation. When he transformed into the Hulk, something far more complex happened than just the manifestation of a monstrous, rage-fueled alter ego. Gamma radiation has long been known to cause mutations, altering the DNA of living organisms. But what if the exposure to gamma rays didn't just affect Banner's own biology? What if, in his quest to create a weapon to protect Earth, he inadvertently unlocked a deeper, more primal aspect of human potential that had always been there, dormant? When Banner's cells absorbed the gamma radiation, it is likely that, in addition to the changes that turned him into the Hulk, a deeper alteration occurred at the genetic level, one that echoed through humanity's genetic code. This could have been the first instance of human mutation on a wide scale. While Banner's body was uniquely suited to handle the radiation and survive the resulting transformation, it's possible that the same genetic mutations started to spread among others, setting the stage for the rise of mutants. The seeds of the X gene, the genetic marker that would later define mutants, could have been sown at that very moment. At first, this mutation might have been so small, so subtle that no one noticed. There were no immediate signs, no sudden appearance of individuals with powers. But something began to change in the world. As time passed, and especially in the aftermath of Banner's transformation, the planet itself started to vibrate with new energy, a ripple effect that activated latent abilities in individuals all over the world. Some of these mutations were too subtle to notice at first, people who had mild abilities or powers they couldn't fully understand. Others, however, would soon come to realize that they were different, in ways that couldn't be explained by science alone. What Bruce Banner's experiment did was open the door to the next phase in human evolution, a door that would eventually lead to the creation of mutants. But this door wasn't merely a physical one, it was a metaphysical one. Gamma radiation had, in a sense, altered the very building blocks of reality itself. The laws of physics and biology were no longer as rigid as they once were. This new form of mutation wasn't limited to just one group of people or one set of circumstances. It was something far more widespread, gradually seeping into the world. As the years passed and the Avengers formed, the world began to notice the increase in powered individuals. People like Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and others seemed to exhibit abilities that couldn't be explained by traditional means. But they weren't mutants in the traditional sense, not at first. Their powers seemed to be the result of external factors, whether it was experimentation, magic, or other causes. But the truth was, Bruce's experiment was already setting the stage for what was to come. The rise of mutants wasn't just a matter of cosmic or magical events. It was the hidden result of Banner's actions. The real turning point, however, would come during the final events of the Infinity Saga. As the Avengers faced the threat of Thanos and his snap, something changed in the cosmic balance of the universe. The multiverse began to unravel, with fractures appearing in the very fabric of reality. What most people didn't realize, though, was that these fractures weren't just the result of Thanos' snap. They were the result of the new reality that Bruce Banner's experiment had created. The activation of latent mutations across the globe wasn't just a natural evolution. It was tied to the very instability of the multiverse itself. In essence, the collapse of the multiverse was a direct consequence of the mutations that Banner had inadvertently set in motion. As the boundaries between realities grew thinner, new forms of life, mutants, began to manifest, not just on Earth, but across multiple universes. The concept of mutants, long relegated to the fringes of comic books, was becoming a reality within the very fabric of the MCU. And with it, the rise of new powers, new heroes, and new threats, each one tied to the legacy of the Hulk. Bruce Banner, in his quest to better the world and defend humanity, had done something far more significant than he ever intended. He had opened a door that would forever change the course of human evolution, one that would lead to the creation of mutants, beings whose existence would shape the future of the MCU. The Hulk's experiment, once thought to be a tragic mistake, would become the catalyst for an entirely new era, and the world was only beginning to feel the ripple effects of that monumental event. Captain America's time travel created a splinter timeline, and his presence in the past secretly shaped key MCU events without anyone knowing. When Captain America traveled back in time at the end of Avengers Endgame to return the Infinity Stones to their proper places in history, he did more than simply correct the timeline. Unbeknownst to the Avengers, Steve Rogers' actions didn't just ensure the restoration of the universe after the snap. They created an entirely new timeline, a splinter reality that would have profound effects on the future, without anyone realizing the hidden consequences. His decision to remain in the past, to live a life with Peggy Carter, unknowingly set off a chain of events that would subtly but powerfully alter key moments in the MCU. In Endgame, Tony Stark and the team devised a plan to travel back in time to retrieve the Infinity Stones from various points in history. The idea was to go to specific moments, take the stones without disturbing the timelines, and return them before their theft would create paradoxes. Captain America, as the moral compass and heart of the team, played a vital role in executing this mission. He successfully returned the stones to their rightful places in time, or so it seemed. But Steve Rogers did something that altered the course of history in ways no one anticipated. The first key moment occurred when Captain America, having returned the stones, chose to stay in the past rather than return to the present. By going back to a time where he could live out his life with Peggy Carter, Steve Rogers wasn't just changing his own personal history, he was creating a new reality. This act of staying in the past resulted in a splinter timeline, one that diverged from the main MCU continuity. In this new timeline, Captain America would not be the same figure in the 21st century, and certain events would unfold differently than anyone could predict. One of the most profound impacts of Steve's decision would come in the form of his influence on key individuals in the Splinter timeline. Take, for instance, the creation of S.H.I.E.L.D. Peggy Carter was a crucial figure in the formation of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the main timeline, but in the alternate reality created by Steve's choice to stay, she might have approached the agency's founding with a different perspective, potentially reshaping its structure and goals. With Steve by her side, their decisions regarding global security, the creation of advanced technologies, and the handling of superpowered threats might have diverged significantly from the course the original timeline took. Without Steve Rogers' presence in the 21st century, figures like Nick Fury or even Tony Stark might have been led down a path without Captain America's steady moral compass. Moreover, in this altered timeline, the Avengers' formation would have been impacted. Captain America's absence from the timeline meant that many of the events that led to the creation of the Avengers in the main timeline would have unfolded differently. Without Steve, the unity of the Avengers might never have been possible, as his leadership and values were crucial in bringing them together. The Avengers' first battle with Loki and the Chitauri, or the civil war that followed, could have seen a much darker and more divided path without Steve's influence. In fact, Steve's absence in the main timeline could have been the reason why certain heroes, like Tony Stark, never truly came together with others. Another consequence of Steve's time travel was his subtle influence on Hydra. Throughout the MCU, Hydra has been a constant and dangerous threat, one that has infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. and attempted to reshape the world in its own image. However, in the timeline where Steve stayed in the past, it's possible that Hydra's infiltration was far more successful than anyone realized. Steve's decision to stay and live with Peggy may have led to the creation of a secret Hydra faction that operated from the shadows, influencing world events far more than anyone in the main timeline could have known. Perhaps Hydra even played a role in the rise of Ultron, a dark reflection of Tony Stark's technological aspirations. Perhaps most importantly, Steve's decision to remain in the past created a ripple effect in the lives of the Avengers. The absence of Captain America's leadership in the present day meant that heroes like Falcon, Black Widow, and even Hawkeye would have to step up in ways they hadn't anticipated. With no Captain America guiding them, these heroes may have found themselves facing far greater challenges in the fight against evil forces that the world had yet to fully comprehend. They would also face the task of keeping Steve's legacy alive without him physically there. The absence of Steve Rogers would ultimately lead to new dynamics within the Avengers, where the absence of a leader may have created more internal conflict or set the stage for new alliances to form. The timeline that Steve Rogers created, the one where he stayed with Peggy, was never meant to intersect with the main MCU timeline. It was a divergence, a side branch that was carefully sealed off from the events that were unfolding in the primary universe. Yet, even though this splinter timeline was separate, it left an imprint on the main timeline that would resonate in subtle ways. By staying in the past, Captain America created a version of history that no one, not even the Avengers, would fully understand. And in this new reality, the world would forever be shaped by his presence in ways that might never come to light, leaving behind an unseen legacy that shaped the MCU in ways both small and monumental. Thor's new Asgard is a ticking time bomb. The gods he abandoned aren't happy, and a new Ragnarok is coming. After the events of Avengers Endgame, Thor's journey took a different turn. No longer the king of Asgard and disillusioned with his past failures, Thor left the remnants of his home behind and chose to journey with the Guardians of the Galaxy, leaving the responsibilities of leadership to Valkyrie. Thor's absence, however, set the stage for a far greater crisis, one that is quietly building in the shadows of new Asgard on Earth. As the gods he once ruled over grow restless, Thor's abandonment may have set in motion the beginning of another Ragnarok, one that may soon threaten not just Asgard, but the entire realm of the gods themselves. Thor's decision to leave New Asgard was seen by many as an act of failure. Once proud and strong, he had fallen into a deep depression after the events of Infinity War and Endgame, where he lost everything: his home, his family, and his sense of self. His decision to abdicate the throne and leave the rebuilding of Asgard to Valkyrie was not just a retreat, it was a statement. Thor, in his eyes, had failed as king, failed as a god, and failed his people. The weight of his actions weighed heavily on him, leading to his departure from New Asgard and a new life that was more about rediscovering his purpose than leading his people. However, what Thor didn't fully realize was that by abandoning New Asgard, he left a power vacuum in the realm of the gods. Asgard had always been a powerful and ancient civilization, with gods and goddesses who ruled over various domains of the universe. By leaving his people, Thor severed the last tether that connected New Asgard to the golden age of the gods. As Thor withdrew from his role, he inadvertently set the stage for a new Ragnarok, an event that would not only challenge the gods he abandoned, but also expose the deep fractures within their society. The gods of Asgard, particularly those who had been loyal to Thor and his family, have long relied on the strength of their leadership to guide them. But with Thor gone, and with his inability to fix the world he once ruled, many of these gods have turned against the idea of living in exile on Earth. They are ancient beings used to the grandeur of Asgard and the power that came with it. Earth, with its limited scope and mundane concerns, is beneath them. Their anger and frustration have been simmering, and it is only a matter of time before they begin to rebel. In addition to the traditional gods, there are also the forces of chaos and destruction that were woven into the fabric of Asgardian existence, forces that were always meant to keep the gods in check. With the absence of Thor and his leadership, these destructive entities, such as Surtur, could begin to rise again. Surtur, the fiery demon lord, had been a major part of Ragnarok, but his death did not fully eradicate his power. If anything, his presence is still lingering, and his return could signal the beginning of another great war. With no Asgardian king to stop them, the forces of chaos may begin to gather, ready to burn down everything once again. Thor's departure also ignored the deep-seated issues among the gods themselves. The Asgardian gods were always more than just the noble warriors they appeared to be. They had political and personal rivalries, old grudges, and ambitions that often threatened to tear them apart. Without Thor to unite them, these tensions could come to a head. Loki, for instance, might find a new way to take advantage of the situation. The trickster god had long been the thorn in Thor's side, and with Thor gone, Loki might finally decide to take matters into his own hands, rallying disgruntled gods to his cause. Loki's ambitions, combined with the dissatisfaction of the other gods, could spark a rebellion that threatens the very existence of New Asgard. Even beyond the gods of Asgard, there is the broader cosmic context to consider. The Asgardians were always tied to the larger tapestry of the universe, and with their fall from grace, the balance of power could shift in ways that affect the entire realm of gods and mortals alike. Thor's abandonment could inadvertently trigger the attention of powerful cosmic entities who see the gods of Asgard as a threat or a destabilizing force. With the rise of new cosmic powers like the Eternals, the Celestials, and possibly even Kang the Conqueror, the Asgardians may find themselves caught in a cosmic struggle much larger than they could have imagined. As for Valkyrie, while she is doing her best to lead New Asgard on Earth, the truth remains that she is struggling to fill the void left by Thor. She is a capable warrior and a loyal ally, but the weight of leadership is crushing, especially when the people of New Asgard are still reeling from the loss of their home, their former king, and the battle with Thanos. Valkyrie's reign might not last long, and her leadership may soon be called into question, especially if Thor's absence continues to erode the confidence of the Asgardian people. What Thor didn't realize in his attempt to escape from the past and rediscover himself was that he left behind a time bomb waiting to explode. The gods he abandoned were not content to live in exile on Earth forever. They wanted their home back. They wanted their glory restored. And the pressures of their existence were too much to ignore. This simmering anger could soon lead to a violent confrontation. A second Ragnarok that Thor may not be able to prevent, no matter how far he runs. His actions may have sealed Asgard's fate and the fate of the gods themselves, setting the stage for a reckoning that could bring about a new age of destruction, rebirth, and chaos in the universe. Gamora's soul wasn't truly resurrected. The 2014 version is a fragmented being who will one day seek the Soul Stone's true power. When the Avengers succeeded in retrieving the Infinity Stones from the past during the time heist, they unknowingly unleashed something far darker than they anticipated. In an effort to restore the lost lives from the snap, the Avengers retrieved the Soul Stone from Vormir, but in the process, they unknowingly resurrected not the Gamora they knew, but an alternate version of her. A version from 2014, the same year she was first seen as part of Thanos' warband. While she may appear to have returned to the fold, this 2014 iteration of Gamora is not the same soul that was sacrificed on Vormir. Instead, the soul of this Gamora is a fractured being, one whose essence has been splintered between dimensions, and the power that once resided in the Soul Stone might be the key to unlocking her true potential and understanding the full depth of her existence. The resurrection of Gamora is a curious and tragic occurrence. During the events of Avengers Endgame, when Black Widow and Hawkeye battled for the Soul Stone on Vormir, it was Natasha Romanoff who made the ultimate sacrifice for the stone, giving up her life so that the Avengers could gain access to its power. This was a moment that permanently altered the fabric of the universe in ways few could understand. When the Avengers ultimately succeeded in reversing Thanos' snap, they used the Infinity Stones to undo the catastrophic loss of life. However, while the Avengers brought back their fallen comrades from the blip, they faced an unintended consequence. Gamora, whom Thanos had killed in the past for the stone, was resurrected not from the timeline they knew, but from the 2014 version of her, before she was truly reconciled with her family and free from the influence of the Mad Titan. This version of Gamora had not experienced the same life lessons, the same personal growth, or the same relationships with the Guardians of the Galaxy as the Gamora they had lost. Instead, she was a different person entirely. One who was still loyal to Thanos, still bound by her brutal past, and still grappling with the very nature of who she is. While she may appear physically identical to the Gamora the Avengers once knew, this version is a person who has not yet gone through the transformative experiences that would have made her the hero they once fought alongside. And yet, this version of Gamora's soul is not entirely intact. The key to understanding the true nature of her resurrection lies in the Soul Stone itself. The Soul Stone is not just a powerful object capable of destroying life and creating balance. It is a unique, mysterious artifact with the ability to manipulate the essence of souls. It is implied throughout the Marvel Universe that the Soul Stone exists as a bridge between different planes of existence, with the souls of the deceased residing in a realm beyond our understanding. When Thanos sacrificed Gamora to obtain the Soul Stone, her soul was taken to this limbo-like dimension. Her essence was bound within the stone itself, lingering between life and death, no longer fully attached to her body but neither entirely gone. When the Avengers collected the stones from the past and returned to the present, the Soul Stone was used to undo Thanos' destruction. However, this process was not as straightforward as it seemed. Because they obtained the stone from 2014, they brought back a version of Gamora who was still inextricably tied to the Soul Stone's power. This connection had a lasting effect on her soul, creating a fractured version of the person she once was. While her physical body was resurrected, her essence was torn between dimensions, the remnants of the soul trapped in the Soul Stone in one plane of existence, and the revived form existing in another. The result was a Gamora who, while she may look and sound like the original, is still a mere shadow of the person she once was. Gamora's soul, as it exists in this 2014 version, is incomplete. Her memories are fragmented, her sense of identity shaken, and she has yet to fully reclaim the essence of who she truly was before her sacrifice. This version of Gamora is essentially a hollow being, trapped between worlds, not fully her own, and very much vulnerable to forces outside her control. She doesn't yet have access to her true self, and it's this fractured state of being that will, one day, drive her to seek out the Soul Stone once again, where she will attempt to reunite her fragmented soul with her true essence. This quest for the true power of the Soul Stone may one day lead Gamora down a dark and dangerous path. While she may have returned to her Guardian's family, her soul's unrest could eventually push her to seek the stone in hopes of understanding the true nature of her existence. The Soul Stone, after all, does not simply store souls. It can also be used to manipulate them, to reshape their very being. And if the stone's power can be harnessed by someone as determined as Gamora, she could potentially unlock a power that not only restores her to her former self, but transcends the limits of her human and cosmic existence. Her pursuit of this power may ultimately challenge the very fabric of the universe itself, bringing her into conflict with the Avengers and possibly even threatening the stability of reality itself. In the end, Gamora's resurrection is not the clean return of a lost hero, but the birth of something much more complicated. The version of Gamora who is walking with the Guardians is not the same soul that was sacrificed on Vormir. She is a reflection of that soul, a piece of a puzzle that has yet to be completed. And in her quest to fully understand who she is, she may very well end up seeking the Soul Stone once more, and in doing so, uncovering the power to change the universe forever. Vision's body is just a vessel. His true essence was always bound to the Mind Stone, and its fragments across the universe are awakening. When Vision died at the hands of Thanos in Avengers Infinity War, it seemed like the end for the artificial hero. His body, now lifeless and without the Mind Stone embedded in his forehead, was left behind as a tragic reminder of the hero that was. However, Vision's death did not mark the end of his existence in the cosmic sense. His true essence, the consciousness that had made him more than just a machine, was never solely tied to his physical form. Instead, it was inextricably connected to the Mind Stone, a source of immense cosmic power. And while the Mind Stone was destroyed when Thanos crushed it to access the final stone, the fragments of its power did not vanish with it. They lingered across the universe, each piece containing a part of Vision's soul, and these fragments are slowly beginning to awaken. From the moment Vision was created, his existence was tied to the power of the Mind Stone. Tony Stark and Bruce Banner worked together to give him life, using the stone's extraordinary power as a catalyst to create an artificial intelligence unlike any the world had ever seen. While Vision had his own sense of self, his thoughts, emotions, and actions were always influenced by the Mind Stone, the very thing that gave him his consciousness. The stone was not merely a power source. It was the foundation of Vision's being. It gave him the ability to feel and understand, to love and to sacrifice. It turned what was once a synthetic construct into something far more profound, something with the capacity to grow, learn, and evolve. When Thanos came for the stones in his quest to erase half of all life in the universe, he targeted Vision specifically for the Mind Stone. The battle on Wakanda, where the Avengers fought desperately to protect him, was a futile one in the end. Thanos succeeded in removing the stone from Vision's forehead, killing him in the process. The Mind Stone, which had been the core of Vision's essence, was destroyed. But the thing that many didn't realize was that Vision's consciousness was never truly confined to that stone alone. Vision had become so deeply connected to the Mind Stone's power that a part of him existed beyond it. His consciousness had become an extension of the stone, And when it was shattered, the essence of who Vision was did not simply cease to exist. This is where the true mystery lies. The destruction of the Mind Stone didn't end Vision's existence. It merely scattered the pieces of his essence throughout the universe. While some of these fragments may have been too small or too fragmented to reassemble into a full consciousness, they are not gone entirely. Some of these pieces, scattered across the cosmos, began to resonate with one another in ways that would soon lead to their awakening. These fragments, hidden in the vastness of space and time, contain the essence of Vision, fragments of his mind, his soul, his sense of self. As the universe continues to unfold, the fragments of the Mind Stone will inevitably come into contact with one another. The first piece of this puzzle may have already begun to take form. In WandaVision, we saw the return of Vision in a way that seemed impossible, an ethereal digital copy of him created by Wanda's grief and power. While this version of Vision was a product of Wanda's mind, he still carried the essence of the Vision that had died, showing that pieces of his being were still out there, still capable of reforming in some capacity. Wanda's magic, coupled with the lingering fragments of the Mind Stone, allowed for Vision to temporarily return. But this was only a glimpse of what was to come. The universe is vast, and the fragments of the Mind Stone are scattered across it, waiting to be pieced together. These fragments are not inert. They are powerful, and as they reassemble, they will slowly begin to reform Vision's consciousness, not as he once was, but perhaps as something far more powerful. The Mind Stone's fragments could be the key to unlocking a new version of Vision, one that transcends his original form. As more of these pieces come together, Vision's essence will be pulled from the void, and he will awaken, but not as a mere copy of his former self. His soul, now fragmented and reborn from the power of the Mind Stone, will likely emerge in a form that is entirely new, more powerful, more connected to the cosmic forces of the universe, and perhaps even with knowledge of his fractured existence. This resurrection, however, will not come without consequences. Vision's rebirth could have ripple effects across the entire universe. The power that originally resided in the Mind Stone was unlike anything the universe had ever known. The stone was one of the 6 Infinity Stones, each of which represents a fundamental force of existence. The Mind Stone, as the source of mental and psychic power, grants unimaginable abilities to those who can harness it. But the fragments of Vision's essence scattered throughout the universe will not only carry the potential to resurrect him, they may also unlock dormant cosmic powers that were previously unreachable, altering the fabric of reality in ways that no one could foresee. The potential for Vision's rebirth, guided by the fragments of the Mind Stone, also carries with it the possibility of unlocking a deeper connection to the Infinity Stones themselves. The Mind Stone was, after all, one of the most powerful artifacts in the universe. Its destruction did not erase its influence. It merely fractured it. As these pieces of Vision begin to reunite, they will also begin to resonate with the other Infinity Stones, and the power of the Mind Stone will once again come to the forefront. Vision, or what remains of him, could eventually seek to reunite with these fragments, gaining control over his own destiny, and possibly even wielding the power of the Mind Stone in a way that is beyond anyone's understanding. The universe will feel the repercussions of this, and the true nature of Vision's consciousness will emerge, far more complex and far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The story of Vision did not end with his death. It was merely another chapter in a much larger narrative, one that has yet to unfold completely. His true essence will return, and when it does, the universe will be forced to reckon with the consequences of his resurrection and the powers that will come with it.